I want to share a story with you before we kind of jump into the message today. I remember when I was a little kid, growing up in Las Vegas. How many of you have been to Vegas before? Raise your hand. It's okay. I won't tell. All right, I remember I was growing up in Las Vegas. I forget how old I was, maybe about 10 or 11 or something like that. It was a very mischievous age. Come on, somebody. You know what I'm talking about. And my mom told me I was grounded from school, probably from school. I did something at school. I got in trouble. I was grounded, and it was Saturday morning. And come on, that's the worst part, to be grounded on a Saturday morning. It's Saturday morning cartoons, right? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. And you're getting ready. You wake up with your snacks, and you're getting ready to watch TV. You're Saturday morning cartoons. And I was grounded, so I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't go outside. My friends, every Saturday, never fails. They come knocking on the door. We come outside, have a basketball hoop. We go play ball, throw the football around. We're just on the block. It's just, the good old days. You know what I'm talking about. I want to go back. And so I remember just, again, grounded, and I couldn't go outside. I was like, man, it's Saturday morning. I'm upset about this. And I come out to the living room. My mom's in the kitchen doing something. And I said, hey, Mom, my friends, and surely they come knocking on the door. And I said, hey, can I go outside and play? And she says, no, you're grounded. You can't leave. And come on. Somebody you've made a decision that you look back and you regret, okay? This is one of those times for me. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to go outside. I can't. I'm grounded. I told my friends. I went to the door. So sad. I opened the door. I said, I can't go outside. I'm grounded. Mom said I have to stay here. And so I said, I'll see you guys next week or something like that. And so I hang out. I'm in the living room area watching my mom, and she's doing stuff around the house. And so she goes to her room, and I take the opportunity to kind of sneak out in the backyard. And there's a basketball back there, and I was just bouncing the basketball, and eventually I started bouncing the ball towards the fence. I got closer towards the fence, and all of a sudden I let go of the basketball, and now my legs are hitting over the fence. And my friends are all out there. They see me. I see them. I'm longing for this moment. I'm so excited to go out. And I get ready to hop over the fence. And as I hop over the fence, some of you have heard the story before, and I hop over the fence, and literally I'm shimmying down because it's kind of a long way down. I want to break my ankle on my way to go, break the rules. And so I'm shimmying down the fence, and my underwear gets caught on the back of the fence. And I'm literally dangling from the fence, and my friends are all there laughing at me. My mom overhears what's happening. She runs outside, this little 5-foot Belizean woman with this thick accent. She comes out, Akeem, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm sitting on the fence. I'm dangling there. She's trying to help me. She's trying to undo my underwear from the problem that she's trying to undo my underwear. And I'm sitting there, I'm just dangling. And my friends come, they're laughing. They're screaming. They're dying on the ground, just laughing at me. And finally, my parents, she can't undo my underwear, so she just pulled me back over the fence. And so I come in the backyard, and she's like, what are you doing? I told you, you're grounded. And, of course, added an extra 2 weeks onto that, and I'm stuck in the house, and I regret this decision that I've made. Now, why do I tell you that story? Because like you, or like me, you have participated in all of your bad decisions, right? All of them, right? You were the mastermind behind 100% of your bad decisions. We all were, right? You have participated in all of your bad decisions. And we know this, that a single bad decision is the first step toward establishing a bad habit, right? A single bad decision is the first step toward establishing a bad habit. And so over the next 3 weeks, I want to give you 3 habits that you can begin doing that I believe if they're repeated regularly in your life, it has the power to become rhythm that could change everything for you. And so the first habit today is this. You ready? Look at your neighbor and say, I'm ready. I'm ready. First habit is this. Pay attention to the tension. Pay attention to the tension. Come on, I want everybody in here to say this, even if you're watching later on YouTube, okay, and you're with the Story Kids on YouTube. Come on. Pay attention to the tension, right? Pay attention to the tension, right? Whenever you're considering an option, any decision, any circumstance, any choice, any big deal, anything that's coming up in your life, it's the next step for you. Maybe you're considering it. Whenever you're considering anything, pay attention to the tension, right? If it's causing any sort of hesitation, any tension, any pause, any friction, anything. Stop and pay attention to the tension. Look, don't sell yourself, okay? Don't sell yourself. Stop selling yourself, but pay attention to the tension. Don't sell yourself, right? Start listening. Don't sell yourself. Start listening to yourself. We do this all the time. Right? Which we sell ourselves in an idea. When we think of something that maybe something that we're thinking about buying or they're doing something, and we think about, man, I'm going to start internally creating this narrative, start selling yourself on this idea. We do this all the time. You sell yourself, right? What do you do when you want something, right? You do what I do. You sell yourself and you create this narrative, and we'll talk about that more next. We create this narrative around this idea of this thing that you want to get. Now, you have to be a little bit creative when you do this, and this is how I know this. Because we make up things, and we choose to believe the things that we make up. It's just, human beings are the only ones that do this, right? We make up things, and we choose to believe things that we make up. We do this all the time. And how do I know this? This is how I know this. Because if a salesperson, and we have some salespeople in here, salesmen and women here, if a salesperson said to you, if they use the same pitch on you that you use on yourself, okay, if a salesperson uses the same pitch on you that you use on yourself, you would be offended. You would walk out of that establishment. You would walk out of that Best Buy, that Target, that Sephora. Come on, ladies, right? You would walk out of Ulta because, look, if a salesperson uses the same pitch in a actual retail environment, if they use the same pitch on you that you use on yourself, you would be offended. You would walk out. You would. And you have to be a little bit creative here, but imagine, right? You're in the store and you're negotiating, and they say to you, they say this: if you get home and decide you don't like it, just donate it. Right? How many times do you find yourself saying that to yourself when you're trying to buy something online, right? That comes to your mind when you're trying to buy something online. Look, I'll just donate it. What about this one? I see you already have one that looks exactly like this one does, but this one is newer, right? If someone said that to you, you would be offended. You would walk out. But that's what we tell ourselves. That's a narrative we create when we get ready to do something that we know that we probably shouldn't do. Right? If you buy 3, get 1 free. Wait, what? If I buy 3, I get 1 free. But I only came for 1. Yeah, I know. But you could get 2. You can leave with 2. But I only came for 1. I know, but you can just, how about you just take 2? No, I only came for 1. But so why do I need that? If you buy 3, get 1 free. How about this one? Yes, sirree. Yes, sir. It's wrong. Just don't tell anyone. Right? We're going to go a little bit deeper. Go a little bit deeper. Ready? Sure, your husband would be hurt and offended if he found out, but your husband isn't bright enough to find out. Right? Ladies, right? Come on. If someone said this about your husband, ladies, right, you would be offended. Right? But that's how many times do you tell yourself that when you're considering something that you know you shouldn't consider? We're going to go to the other side and play with this, okay, guys? Yes, your girlfriend would be devastated, but let's face it, she's not nearly as attractive as, look, you would be so offended if someone said that about your girlfriend. But that's what you tell yourself. That's the narrative that you create, that you sell yourself on when you're considering something that you know you probably shouldn't consider. That's why it's important that we can't afford to sell ourselves. We have to pay attention to the tension, right? The moment, this is the habit. The moment you start selling yourself, right? The moment you start selling you should have hit pause. You should have hit pause. Why? Because the moment you start creating this narrative, this internal narrative, it's in here, it's not out there, it's in here. This internal narrative of why you should take this option, of why you should do this thing that you know you shouldn't do. The moment you start doing that, you should hit pause. Because remember this, if you didn't hear anything else to say today, remember this. We rarely have to sell ourselves in a good idea. Right? You rarely have to talk yourself into when you know it's the right thing to do. Rarely. And so, in what we call as Christians the Old Testament, what is known as the Hebrew Scriptures, there's this fascinating piece of narrative that we're going to look at that kind of helps us understand and teases out and illustrates, better illustrates, it illuminates on this idea of paying attention to the tension. And it revolves around this guy, King David, Israel's second king. But the story actually takes place before David becomes king. So David is a young shepherd boy, and he's given some tasks and assignments by his father to take care of the sheep. It's a small task. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to take care of this task, these little things that his father's given him. And so he's taking over these tasks. And there's rumor around town that there's a new king that's going to be anointed to be king. The king was supposed to be in Jesse's household, which is David's father. There's 7 boys. There's a prophet that goes to his father's house, David, Jesse, to anoint the next king that's supposed to be up and coming. And so there's 6 guys. They line them up. Not that one, not that one, not that one. And the prophet looks at Jesse and says, "Is there any more of your sons?" And he says, "There's one more guy. He's in the back taking care of the sheep." He said, "Bring him in." They bring him in. The prophet says, "This is the man." And he anoints him, young boy, 11, 12 years old, anoints to be the next king. This is a big deal for him. This is a big moment in his life. He's getting ready to be the next king, but not yet. He goes back to taking care of the sheep. This is not the sermon, but this is something that needs to be mentioned. With every anointing, does come a promotion. Okay? We're going to go past that. I can stay there for a little bit, but we need to go past that. And so David is taking care of the sheep. He's taking care of the sheep with his father. This is a small task that he has. And he's been anointed king. Now, the next time we hear about David is that he steps on the scene and he kills Goliath. And man, he walks into the battlefield. His brothers are there. The whole army of Israel's there. No one wants to tackle Goliath. And so they're all scared, staying back. David decides, you know what? I'm going to step up. I'm going to take charge of this. And you know the story. He kills Goliath. Goliath falls. Goliath's dead. Everybody's chanting David. They're writing hip-hop songs about David. Saul has slain his thousands. David has tens of thousands. The guy's famous. YouTube sensation overnight. Famous. Big. Saul, first king of Israel, recognizes David's talents, and his popularity brings him close. Says, "David, hey, I want you to become close to me." In fact, Saul marries David off to his family, his daughter. David marries his daughter. He's living life in the kingdom, in the palace. He's enjoying life. But Saul recognizes that David is becoming too popular, that he wants to manipulate him. So he tries to have him killed. It doesn't work. And then he says, you know what? I'll send him off to war, and hopefully the Philistines in battle will take care of him, and then he'll die eventually. The odds are he'll die. He sends him off to war. It doesn't work. One afternoon, he tries to kill David again. And David managed to escape from Saul, and none of Saul's tactics are working. Now, David flees for his life. He can't go home because he put his family in jeopardy. So he flees for his life, leaves the city, and now he's a fugitive. He's an outlaw. He's an outcast. And some other fugitives that kind of hear about David, they kind of rally around David and become his merry men, his men of valor. And these guys are just together. They're in it together through thick and thin. They're friends, they're buddies, they're pals. They're living this life together, outlaw and outcast, out in society, away from the city. Meanwhile, Saul is running the kingdom, and he has spies looking out for David. His spies locate David in the desert of En-Gedi. It kind of looks like this. It's a desert En-Gedi. It's like this. If you ever go to Israel, you'll see there's caves everywhere. It's just this. It's where baseline. Like there's nothing there. Small oasis sprinkled there and then, and it's along the Dead Sea. This land of En-Gedi. This is where David is hiding out. And so Saul gets the word, and Saul, the text says, that's where we pick it up. Saul takes 3,000 men. That's way too many men to fight David. But he understands that David is this man of valor. He's very skilled in fighting in open battle, in open field. So he doesn't want to take a chance. And so he says it takes 3,000 able men from all of Israel to set out to look for David and his men. So these guys are all looking out for David. And it says that they came to a sheep pen along the way. They've traveled for some time. And a cave was there. There's cave everywhere. and Saul went in to relieve himself. Fun fact, maybe, this is the only time in the Bible that we've seen a guy using the restroom. Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know what everyone else done, but we know Saul has to relieve himself. And so this is the picture. Get the picture, right? 3,000 men. I mean, this is a lot of people, a lot of guys, a lot of men. There's wagons, there's water, there's food, there's this caravan of people, there's camp followers. There's a lot of people out looking for David. And so they get to this part, and get this little camp area. And what had happened was, what they heard, Saul's spies were looking out for David, and David's spies were kind of keeping a lookout for Saul. And so David told his men, look, hey, Saul's close nearby, so this is what we're going to do. Scatter in the hills, and when Saul passes through, we'll reconvene, and then we'll go the other way. And so they're in this cave, and then Saul happens to use the restroom. Now, if you're if you're a man in the army, in the king's army, and you have to use the restroom, you can hold it, right? But if you're the king, you can stop the whole caravan, get off his mule. That's what he wrote. He got off his mule, and he went inside the cave to relieve himself. Now, it just so happens that this was the very cave that David and his men were hiding in. David and his men were far back in the cave that Saul is in. Now get the picture. David's in the far back of the cave. His eyes have adjusted. Saul walks in. He can't see a thing. He walks in just far enough to do his business. And he's just a silhouette to David and his men. And could you imagine the tension that David must have felt? To take the initiative to kill. Could you imagine just the tension that David felt? There he is. I mean, David's already been anointed king. He's already been anointed king. He's the next guy king. He's popular. He's the most popular person of all of Jerusalem. Everybody knows about David. Everybody knows he's going to be the next king. And the only thing standing in between him and him becoming king is Saul. And there he is. Could you imagine the tension that he must have felt to act in this situation? Come on. This isn't a question. This isn't a prayer. It's clearly that God had delivered David's enemy into his hand, literally into his hands. And the optics in this would have been amazing, right? Now let's imagine we're outside the cave, the 3,000 men. We're outside the cave, and we're yawning and bored, waiting for Saul to use the restroom. And he goes in, and we glance over to the cave as Saul goes in and makes his way in. And as he walks in, David steps out with Saul's head. And everybody in that caravan would have immediately recognized that David is now the king of Israel. So you can imagine what David must have felt to act on this situation, to take advantage of this situation that's in front of him. I mean, his men, if we don't think that's what David was thinking, this is definitely what his men were thinking, because this is what they said to him in the far back in the cave. They said, the men said this today, the Lord spoke of when you said to you, David, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish, right? This is what David told his men at the campfire. Right? They were huddling over a campfire, and David told his men, look, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer, just stay with me, just wait for me, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. And someday when I become king, I'll reward those of you who have been most honest and loyal to me. So you can't imagine what David must have felt to act on this situation. And his men saying, David, this is exactly what they said. This is exactly what you promised. This is exactly what God has promised to you. Now the waiting is over. Kill the king and let's go home. So you can't imagine what he must have felt to act. The pressure, the tension. But the text tells us, and the story unfolds, that David felt something else as well. He felt a tension. He felt a hesitation. And he does what all of us would do in this situation if we had the opportunity. David takes out his knife, and David crept up unnoticed. There's Saul. And David has his knife, and he gets closer and closer and closer and closer, and that tension starts to intensify and intensify and intensify and intensify. And David is somehow, some way, somewhere from the back of the cave in King Saul's back, somehow David is able to pay attention to the tension. And he says, what am I doing? I'm about to murder the king. I can't murder the king. God chose Saul. I mean, I can't replace what God put in place. I can't murder the king. And David, in that moment, was conscience-stricken, the text tells us. He was conscience-stricken. He says, look, I can't murder the king. And somehow in the back of the cave and King Saul's back, David was able to pay attention to the tension. And this all got reframed for him, right? And all of a sudden, the tension that didn't make any sense made perfect sense. All of a sudden, the hesitation, the pause that didn't make any sense in the light of his circumstances, in the light of his life, it didn't make any sense, but all of a sudden now it made perfect sense. I can't kill the king. I can't murder my own father-in-law. And so he creeps up to Saul and he cuts off part of his discarded robe. He goes back to the back of the cave, and now he has some explaining to do. His men can't believe, like, I can't believe, David, this was the opportunity. We get to finally go home. There's no longer a price on our heads. And he said to his men this, he said this, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed. The Lord forbid that I should take his life. He says, and he said to these guys, he said, with these words, David sharply rebuked them because they said, oh, wait, Saul. Okay, David. Okay, I understand. Maybe you don't want to do it, but let us do it. In fact, we'll all do it. You don't have blood in your hands? Okay, we get it. We understand. But let us do it, David. Let us do it. With these words, he sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went on his way. Let me ask you a question and we'll get back to the story. So close. So close. Are you close? Are you close? Are you considering an option and you're just selling, spinning, selling? Are you so close to considering an option that you know you probably shouldn't consider? Maybe it's a big life change that's going to change everything for you and your family. Is there something that you're selling yourself, and you're creeping up, you're getting so close, but maybe there's a tension there. Can I just say this? It's just a suggestion. You don't have to take it, but let me just say this. Look, hit pause for just a moment and stop selling yourself and pay attention to tension and just listen. Just hit pause for just a moment. Saul walks out of the cave. And as he walks out of the cave, his men are getting back on their mules. They're getting ready to leave. And Saul gets on his mule, and he hears a familiar voice coming from the cave that he just exited. And standing there, flanked with his men at the mouth of the cave, is David. And everybody, all 3,000 people, their heads turn and they look at David and they cannot believe what they see. David bows down in honor of the king and he stands up and takes that piece of robe and he holds it up and he says, look, Saul, and he says these words, Lord Saul, this awesome speech. He says, look, Saul, may the Lord be the judge between you and me. And may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me. But my hand will not touch you. I am going to do the right thing, Saul. I'm not going to make a decision that I know that's going to become a rhythm of my life, that's going to become a habit in my life, that's going to spin out of control in my life, that's going to cause me to regret my worst decisions, forget that I become my worst enemy. Look, Saul, may the Lord be the judge between you and me. And David decided not to use Saul's bad behavior as an excuse for bad behavior. Because he could have, right? Culture's saying this. They're saying this. David, his men are saying this. One thing, another thing. He's feeling this. There's this, look, he had every right to act, but look, he said, look, I'm going to honor the king, and I'm not going to act on this tension. But I'm going to listen, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to hit pause. And Saul is humiliated. Not by David's expertise in war, or by how well he can make a sales pitch. He was humiliated by David's character, by David's self-control. He was humiliated by David's humility. So whenever you're considering an option and there's a tension there, there's a pause there, there's a hesitation there, and it kind of bothers you, my advice is let it bother you. Let it bother you. Let it provoke you. Let it annoy you a little, and ask yourself, why? Why this tension? Why this hesitation? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I feeling this? Right? Because there's that tension inside of us, that still small voice that is, maybe you shouldn't write, because this is the story that you want to tell? Is this the story you want to tell? When there's nothing but a story to tell. This is going to become my legacy. This is what David thought to himself. This is going to become my legacy. This is what I'm going to have to tell my grandchildren about someday. Right? Granddaddy, grandpapa, tell us a story about how you became king again. We love the story. You snuck up behind old King Saul and you slit his throat while using the potty. Right? No. That's not the story you want to tell. There's a tension. If there's a tension, let it bother you and pay attention to the tension. Because again, it could prevent you from becoming your own worst enemy. It could prevent you from establishing a bad habit, a rhythm in your life that could spiral out of control. And down the road, you're looking back and you're wondering, how did I get here? Because remember this. Every habit begins for the first time. And every pattern begins with the first line. And every journey begins with the first step. So ask yourself the question, is there a tension that deserves my attention? Here's a habit or commitment that I want us to commit to obeying and to following. And we'll have a commitment for every week for the next couple of weeks. And the commitment is this. I will pause until I pinpoint the cause. You can't figure out what it is exactly, why you feel that way, why that business deal is not the best suggestion for you to do, and there's a pause there. Maybe your wife is not completely sold on it. Maybe your husband is like, yeah, you should do it. Maybe your kid's like, I don't know. Maybe your parents like, hey, yeah, do it. Culture. Everybody. Look, there's tension. I will hit pause. I will explore before I ignore. I will hit pause until I pinpoint the cause. Because it could help you from establishing a rhythm that you will regret for the rest of your life. A habit. So let me encourage you. This week, next week, whatever that tension is, hit pause and wait. Face it until it goes away. face it until it goes away, or unless something else happens. Let it bother you and pay attention to the tension. So let me pray for you. God, thank you so much for who you are.